Sure, here's a story based on your prompt. Auntie drinks and enjoys the party. The sound of music echoed throughout the house, a lively mix of pop hits and old school classics. It was the night of the annual family reunion, a tradition everyone looked forward to. The house was buzzing with energy as relatives and friends mingled in every corner. The kitchen was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, while the living room was a hub of dancing and chatter. Among the guests was Aunt Clara, a woman in her late 40s with a personality that could light up any room. She wasn't the type of person who would normally be the center of attention at family gatherings, but she had a way of blending into the background while still being noticed for her warmth and sense of humor. This particular reunion was different, though. Aunt Clara had recently gone through a tough few years, losing her job, experiencing a rough breakup, and dealing with some health issues. But tonight, she had decided to leave all of that behind, if only for a few hours. Aunt Clara had always been someone who played the role of the responsible adult in the family, the one who made sure the kids were fed, the games were organized, and the drinks were refilled. But tonight, she wasn't just Aunt Clara, the caring, dependable figure. Tonight, she was Clara, the woman who had a life outside of family obligations and responsibilities. She stood by the punch bowl, chatting with her niece Ellie, a girl in her 20s who had always looked up to Aunt Clara. Ellie was telling a funny story about her college roommate, and Clara couldn't help but laugh. You know, Ellie, when I was in college, I could never keep up with the latest trends. I was so busy studying, I barely knew what TikTok was, Aunt Clara said, laughing at her own joke. Ellie grinned. Well, you're not alone, Aunt Clara. I think half of my generation has no idea how to use it properly either. As the conversation continued, Aunt Clara's eyes kept darting toward the punch bowl. There was something about the mix of fruity flavors and alcohol that felt liberating. She had always been cautious around alcohol, never really letting loose, always staying in control. But tonight felt different. She had always been the one to supervise others, ensuring everyone drank responsibly. But tonight, she felt like it was her turn to have fun. The idea of letting go, even just for a little while, was a tempting thought. Do you think anyone will notice if I take a sip of that punch? She asked Ellie, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Ellie raised an eyebrow. Aunt Clara, you're really asking me that? I thought you'd be the last person to sneak alcohol at a family gathering. Clara chuckled. Maybe tonight I want to be the first. Ellie laughed and nudged her. You're a legend, Aunt Clara. Do what makes you happy. Without thinking twice, Clara filled her cup with the punch, a mix of rum, fruit juices, and a hint of something spicy. She took a tentative sip, and her eyes widened at the sweet but bold taste. It wasn't long before she found herself refilling her cup again. As the evening progressed, Aunt Clara's transformation was subtle but noticeable. She moved away from the corner where she had been talking to Ellie and joined a few cousins on the dance floor. She hadn't danced in years, and it felt liberating to let the music move her without worrying about who was watching. The beat of the music resonated deep within her chest, and she couldn't help but sway her hips to the rhythm. At first, she felt a little out of place. Her body was stiff, and she was conscious of how she must have looked to the younger generation. But as the drinks kicked in, her inhibitions started to fade. The laughter of her cousins, the easy camaraderie of the group, and the infectious rhythm of the music swept her away. She started to loosen up, her movements becoming more carefree. Her face lit up with a smile she hadn't worn in a long time. The hours flew by, and the party seemed to grow even more lively. At one point, the music shifted to an old disco song, and Aunt Clara couldn't resist. She threw herself into the dance, her movements wild and carefree. Her cousins, seeing her go all in, cheered her on. It was as though a switch had been flipped in her. She was no longer just the sensible aunt. She was Clara, the woman who deserved to have fun and enjoy life, despite everything she had been through. The night wore on, and Clara found herself enjoying every moment. She danced with her niece Ellie, laughed with her cousins, and even got up to sing karaoke. She hadn't sung in front of anyone in years, but tonight, the crowd's cheers made her feel like a rock star. Her brother Jack walked over to her at one point, his eyes filled with amusement. Clara, I've never seen you like this before. You're out here partying like you're in your 20s again. Clara grinned, feeling a warmth spread through her.